sheriff first. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes we have to approve. Thank you, Lynn, for doing, getting that done. So let's do a quick roll call. We have Dan Lazars, we have Lynn Haggerty, we have Catherine Robinson, we have Justin Pollard, and we have Sophia Studley. So we don't have Nick. So we have a quorum. And then we have Dennis, DPW manager, and Kristen, the town manager, also lieutenants. So on the screen, I have the April 2nd minutes. If everybody can just take a quick check to make sure.
You can close that retrofit thing.
Sorry about
It's
that.
gonna keep popping up, isn't it?
Yeah, you can, they told me
That's
to
on my
close
machine.
it. Sorry.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions about the meeting minutes from April 2nd? That being said, I'll entertain a motion.
I can't motion my own meeting.
I'm looking at,
Oh, sorry.
I
Yeah,
will
yeah,
move-
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written for last week.
I'll second.
So I have a motion on the table and seconded to approve the meeting minutes. There are 1 or 2 simple spelling errors of a few names in there that I'll have Lynn correct, but other than that, I don't have any other comments.
I get some spelling errors.
I
Oh,
got a Z in there in my name in a couple places.
I forgot your Z. I'll correct that.
I will to, yeah, just that's it.
Oh, actually, you have me as Robinson and it's Robertson.
There you go.
Oh, correct, Kath, Caroline.
And-
Deanne.
You're also
And so-
missing the Y on my name.
Oh, I just killed everybody's name, sorry.
Other than that, they're good meeting
And
minutes.
the content's good.
Check the name spelling, okay.
Rejected.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, Dan Lazar's aye.
Lynn Haggerty, I.
Kathy Robertson, I.
Justin Ballard, aye.
Sophia Studley, I.
Motion carries unanimously with those couple editorials things. That's the April 2nd meeting minutes. Let's go over to,
Let's see how my spelling did the next time.
a little shorter here because we just kind of got in and we really had the conversation about, just capital guidelines, which we just was a discussion point. And then we actually have the information from, that was posted and distributed to the committee on the actual schematic design submission for the DPW. And then, like I said, kind of posted, and I've picked up some comments from folks. I know we didn't have a work session. I apologize. I've been forced to do a couple things at work, screwed up my weekend to get that organized, but I figured what we can do tonight, because I think a bunch of us have been through the set and have some comments, so. Anyways, with that being said, I'll entertain a motion for these meeting minutes to get approved.
I'll move that we approve the meeting minutes as written. My name was spelled right, by the way.
Oh, good, I'll have to look at my other spelling. Anybody spelling
Looking
errors,
for-
let me know.
Looking for a second?
Second.
Second. And I will do the simple caveat that we'll do any kind of spelling corrections with names or such.
Okay.
Seeing no further discussion, do a roll call vote. Dan Lazar's aye.
Lynn Haggerty, I.
Kathy Robertson, I.
Justin Pollard, aye.
Sophia Studley, I.
Motion carries unanimously. So we're done with that. So let's get into the thing we're here for, which is
Jim.
set that we have in Bluebeam. Justin, I did get your email. I apologize, not getting it. Said work's not kind to me in a good way. We have a bunch of project opportunities that are coming in. But, I keep pushing my company, my new parent company and my business unit that I work in. It's wreaking havoc on me. With that being said, Justin, you want to go over your email comments? You want me to bring those up? I can bring them up because I get some good comments in there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do like a design review, right? I really was just trying to focus on what how the budget was structured, what they had for percentages. Feels like we're sort of past the process where we might provide more feedback for a bunch of like alternates or I think we're past that and it's not useful. I think so. I just spent time looking at what they had for percentages, trying to see if they were appropriate or not. And I thought, it looks like it's in pretty good shape, to be honest. Some general stuff. How does the logistics of the project sort of impact service in the community? I know Dennis has a plan. I was just kind of curious. I didn't ask at last meeting, but I know it's an expansion, but there's also relocations and just work. So I'm curious how that was described in the bid, and what they're ready to deal with, I guess. Not that, Dan, you have the answer for that, but it was a question that I sort of had.
Yeah, so this is a schematic design. I kind of agree with what your assessment is. I mean, it's definitely appropriate and can be complete schematic design. I think there was some discussion. I can give a little background to that from last night. The DPW building committee met and did the same kind of thing. And we kind of arrived at a lot of the similar things you're talking about, Justin. It's for a schematic design set and budget we were looking at. That everything seems to be complete for this phase. They are working design development and they actually have an initial draft of that ready, but it's not distributed, and not to mess things up. We're not going to look at that for this. Everything that's been done for the town meeting has been done on the schematic design set. A couple things popped up last night. I believe that there's the existing building and some energy code items that I asked the design professional Weston Sampson to address. Because if you saw from the budget, there's not a lot of money being spent on the existing building. About $200,000, $300,000, I think was the total number. And it was mostly systems inside. And I think I just had asked Weston and Sampson because they actually had in the narrative, the architecture mechanical narrative referred to the building as less than 20,000 square feet because the energy code trip is at 20,000 square feet. So we had a discussion about JP, one of the architectural lead for the project. And, I asked him, I said, you need to reconcile that because your building code summary drawings show the building is 20,248 square feet. So you're over the number. And then it came to a discussion. Two things really is whatever we do, the existing building should be appropriate for 2026 and the energy code. Bare minimum for compliance. And I think I asked the other question too about I suspect, the building's not that old, so I don't think it requires a lot, but it does need to make sure that we don't have any skin with siding, roof, doors that need some love. The last thing that never goes over well is a new building addition tacked onto an old building, and not much has been done with the old building. So I think those couple of questions need to be reconciled. And as they do the design development, they'll see where they're going to land with stuff. So I think, to your point, when you look at the budget, some of your comments that are up on the screen, there's definitely dollars in this budget that can accommodate these kinds of comments to be addressed. So Weston and Sampson took that, and then the other item that came up, there were two other items that came up in the discussion last night. The first was the temporary fuel island. And we're going to put the caveat that the temporary fuel island is probably going to be 10 or 20 years temporary. It's not going to be the bigger one that was originally planned for a larger DPW facility, which we had to back away from. So I think we kind of did a full circle saying, geez, you don't want to spend almost $200,000 on a temporary fuel island and not, for example, replace or update the tanks. So, and make sure it's sized for that 10 or 20 years that needs to be. And, it doesn't mean you need to buy everything, but they need to at least have the right size diesel tank, which has been one of the big deficiencies that they've run across. And Dennis is here, and he can probably talk about it more. So there was a discussion there. I think the dollars in the budget at a schematic design were showing enough money to kind of sort those things out to come up with the best solution. And then Andy was talking about, Andy, from the DPW committee, was talking about some of the site issues, him being a site contractor by trade and owning his own firm. He was pretty confident from what he knows of the building and town and stuff, that he was asking why we're carrying the lift station, and they said that we don't have that designed yet, but we don't think we need it. So there's more money there that could come out too. That was a significant amount of dollars and some space. For example, the plumbing room is fairly big to accommodate that lift station. So if we don't need it, hopefully they can sort that out sooner rather than later and kind of figure out what they want to do with those things. And then there was a discussion, I think, a few questions about some other site elements that were related to just, the amount of paving and concrete that is going on and the utilities. And again, I think Andy had just asked a couple of questions about making sure that those scope items were accurate. He felt that there were dollars in some of those items that he would hope to see an improvement in it being better defined in the cost estimate going forward. And thinks if anything, it'll trend down.
Yeah, Dennis brought up the pump station not being needed that's on the documents. It was just one of the examples we talked about last week.
Yeah, so I think when you start kind of getting some of those things down, I think those are some of the questions that came about, and we talked a little bit about the generator too last night. But I mean, it's gonna be a diesel merchant generator. I think we all agree that same thing, and that was the other issue I think that Andy brought up from the building committee on the DPW side was again, we probably don't need to have a full-blown enclosure.
Yeah.
Probably can just get away with having a residential muffler on it to keep the sound within our property lines of the
Yeah.
building. So they took that under, the design professionals from Weston and Sampson, acknowledge that.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Generally
like
not.
when the power's out, everyone has their generators on. Like it's not,
Exactly.
and they're sort of tucked away there. So
Yeah, so I think all those things are trending down to keep money down. And then some of the things we'd asked about, the questions about that, okay, what does the fuel island should look like, even though it may be there for 10 or 20 years before there's a need for a larger one. And then, make sure we're doing enough love to the existing building and picking the right simple improvements to make sure we don't have to revisit the building between, the next 20 or 25 years, to make sure it's the right energy mix. Don't add insulation if there's no real driver for that. The energy code is going to make them do a simple assessment that does that anyways, to look at life cycle costs. So, and then just same thing, painting or updating the building skin to make sure it's going to be good for the next 25 years. And that's a simpler Butler building. So, as you know, Justin, those Butler buildings had kits where you could just do those upgrades. So it's not like a huge design issue. It's like literally picking something. And I think some of those things from a cost per square foot are crazy. So given all those are the kind of items that have come up. And he actually talked about the utility back charges too, same thing. Andy thought that those were generous in this submission. So there's nothing
Okay.
that seems.
yeah, he thought it was more than enough. I wasn't really sure. I'm used to whenever I hear utility back charges, usually it's hundreds of thousands, but I think I'm in a different world than this.
I think the building's small enough, it'll be interesting, but that kind of goes back to the whole question about the energy piece and the life cycle that goes with that. So, yeah, it'd be interesting.
And then how in these jobs, winter conditions part of the GCs normally?
You know,
Because you can blow 300 grand on diesel fuel for heaters and stuff when you're pouring slabs, and I know it's not a crazy job, but you can just blow a lot of money on that item.
I guess that would come into the whole idea of when construction would start to avoid those kinds of things. The project's small enough, you could do all your
Yeah.
work in the season, so you can avoid all that.
yeah, it's sort of within your capability to move it around. So, okay, yeah. And then I thought the allowances, the ones that were listed, seemed fine, right? The communication access control, I mean, devicing is probably expensive, but that seemed like a pretty good number for that item.
I agree.
Um,
Go ahead.
And then the canopy, like I think, the way that Dennis and people are speaking about this project, they're very accommodating, right? Like if they think there's an issue that something that's going to be over budget, it seems like they're offering up to chop it or whatever if we have to. So I just think they're talking about everything the right way. And then the canopy, like how do you, it's an alternate, but do you have to decide at the onset of the project, or can you wait 3/4 of the way through? Has that been talked about?
No, it's fossil bid. So you and I are talking the world that's typically like CM at risk where you're actually buying a job out, right? You're gonna have to buy the job out. The alternate would be exercised right up front in this hard bid setup.
Yeah.
Justin, that's the way it works. It's not like the 149 process is pretty unforgiving. So you gotta either decide you can do it up front or not. That's how it works. I don't, like you, I don't work on a lot of 149 projects. Most of
No.
us all pick one for good reasons.
No,
Not
I
the
mean,
most-
for the type of building this is, there shouldn't be
Yeah,
design changes in the project. They shouldn't be running into a lot during the project if it's run well, right? So it should be manageable. Just something that I was kind of curious, like, do they want to wait to see if they're out of, not design contingency, but out of money, or paying changes before they make that decision? Or I was just kind of curious about that. If it's all up front, it's all up front.
it's all up front, and I'm like you, I think you almost want to have a couple alternates scoped. Because I
Yeah.
personally think that there's going to be an opportunity to get some things done, because overall, my take on the budget was that, they're saying the hard construction cost was only between 10 and $11 million.
Mhm.
And we're talking about a total budget of 17. So I think there's, to your point, with some of the larger numbers that are put in there up front, the contingencies at 12%, 20% for the GC, that's generous, right?
Covered.
Yeah. You guys would love to have 20%.
Are you kidding me?
So, and the escalation seems reasonable. I actually feel escalation numbers are very flat these days from what I'm seeing on projects. For the first time, we're seeing things come in as we expect, or even a little less, which is good. So I'm like with you on that. I think the 5% escalation is plenty at the moment. But again, with the 149 job, with the file submit up front, that's a good question to ask. But I would look at the UDOC alternates. I would agree with that aspect.
Yeah, if we did it during the other project, sounds like they're taking the same approach where they're able to take some good deducts right up front when there were good numbers out there. And we never talked about them again. It worked pretty well. And obviously that project came in under, so that was part of it.
Yeah, so let's take a quick look at the building itself. So here's the existing building itself. I'm just getting the plans quick. How you doing with note taking? Are you doing good?
I'm doing all right, but you can send me some
We will.
stuff.
We have the recording too.
Yes.
When you think about it, like I said, they are 23, 24-year-olds, or actually more like 27, 28-year-old roll-up doors, And there's not that many man doors on the exterior. So when you look at some of those basic things, we're talking about energy code and insulation, you're not talking a lot of scope just to give this building the right mix. So JP from Weston and Sampson have talked about, making sure that that is assessed in the energy code analysis for where they're at, especially now that they're DD, they're starting to pick system selections. So then you start making a logical decision based on how you're using energy and what your envelope is going to perform like. So you get some decisions. And then I asked them too, in general, that they need to, as a design professional, they need to tell us the skin, the roof, and the doors are good to go. When you look at how we're opening that building up and just using it as a large storage space and kind of clearing it out, and reusing some of the spaces. This isn't big scope to ask them to take a closer look at that. Because the budget SD did not cover that, but I don't think we're talking numbers that would upset any apple carts. Any questions about the existing building? So let's go into the two different pieces of the addition.
I have a question about the existing building.
Sure.
How is it tying into the new construction? Because there's only one section taken through it and it doesn't look like it's even touching the new building in the section.
So you think of the SD, they don't really show that connection. That's
Yeah.
clear. They should.
So are they demoing the existing envelope of the building?
It's a good point. They're actually showing the exterior
Because that
wall.
door just goes to a wall.
That's a good question. That can go with the whole envelope discussion, Sophia?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I
Go on
think the minute that they like rip into the existing building, that's when it's like gonna trigger the energy code and all of that. So I don't know if their strategy around that is to like leave it complete.
Sort of looks like they're building they're framing a wall, blowing it with spray foam insulation, and then cladding it right against the existing. It's just, it looked from this to me.
Yeah.
So through the chair, if I may,
Go ahead, Dennis.
I
Yep.
think it's important for the committee to understand you're looking at schematic design, not construction documents. So there's an awful lot that you're missing. That's going to illustrate how the connections are made, and to the point, a very important piece of information to be able to understand how those connections are made. So this is a schematic design, so it shows the overall understanding of how the building layout is going to be. Keep in mind, for the committee's understanding, we start this process right after the fall town meeting in November. So in December, we open the warrant. We start putting together warrant articles for the future annual town meeting. At that point, we're already pushing our engineers to pull out their crystal balls and start putting together design estimates and cost estimates for a building that they haven't even designed yet. As we get closer and closer to town meeting, the project starts to come together and everything becomes accurate and pinpoint. Keep in mind, even after town meeting in May, there are construction documents still being finalized for this project. So you're not looking at the final. I just want to make that clear to the committee so that
Yeah.
everyone understands you're not looking at the end result.
Yeah, I think, Dennis, we totally agree with that, and myself and Justin's and Sophia basically do, we work on these projects every day. It's, not this exact project, but projects similar. So we'll point out questions, and I'm sure that Weston and Sam answers to explain those kinds of things, but I do agree that that'll be another thing that kind of ties into the energy code performance.
Right. That's
Building envelopes, the performance issue. Go ahead, Justin.
I think that's where Sophia, you were going, right? Is like, if you're.
Yeah, I understand that they're schematic, but usually they want to start flushing out these issues early on in a schematic design. They don't just want to sandwich two buildings together. So that's why I was wondering if anyone knew.
And the more you rip into the existing, the more they might
Mhm.
do it, right? So if
Yeah.
it's a standalone, it's like, nope, this is a new building next to the old one,
Mhm.
like next to each other. Don't make us do insulation or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a little tricky too, because if you look at it, these actual floor plans in the architecture series are actually developed past what I would typically see in schematic design. To your point, Sophia, it starts to look a little more.
Yeah,
look more
they
like
do look very
DD
developed for
plans.
schematic.
Yeah, the architecture plans are DD, but then we had no engineering plans. And there was no real structure plans either, other than just really diagrammatic ones. But that's a good question. And it looks like, to answer your bigger question, this is the only opening here.
Yeah.
But we all know that there'll be a lot of other things that poke it before it's all said and done. And to think about that wall assembly and then how it'd be poked now and ask a couple of questions. Doesn't hurt.
A lot
So,
of the separation through the chair, a lot of the separation comes down to other things like exhaust and noise control. So as you're
Mhm.
separating the administrative area from both the storage area and the workshop for the vehicle maintenance, there's a constant, they're cognizant about trying to maintain the noise factor down and we want to try to separate all of the odors and everything associated with with the maintenance of vehicles from the regular admin situation.
yeah, they're actually in the fleet storage, Dennis, according to the narrative, you're gonna have a vehicle extraction system. Which kind of lends to the whole idea of making sure you don't look at the roof, you're gonna poke it a whole bunch of times. Doesn't make sense just to replace it as you poke it as part of this energy component. So that wasn't really in the SD, but it's a good question as they kind of put forward to look at some of those things. So, yeah, no, good point. Like you said, I think we'll add that question in there. Like I said, I didn't see anything really going on with the floor plans that really stood out to me. That was one thing I did. So here's one of the examples with, if you don't have a lift station, that room gets a lot smaller, or the need for it. So they may put other stuff in there or repurpose that in a different space, as a simple example. But yeah, and otherwise, it seems like, the program space looks appropriate. I looked at the RCP plans and there's a lot of spaces, Dennis, that often people get rid of ceilings, especially in the kind of building where there's not too many people wearing really business casual down there. Everybody's in work stuff. So your whole admin side of this side, is an example of like VE ideas that could be all ceilings. And then on this other side, you can get rid of a lot of ceilings, spend money on other stuff. But that was another thing I saw that was interesting. And then, like in the vehicle wash bay, it looks straightforward.
Dennis, I don't know, I think you were not on yet, but just through this project and how this building was designed, like, is there a lot of impact to your operations as this gets done? Obviously, it's going to be a challenge no matter what, but was
Absolutely. And that, Justin, that's a great question. And that's one of the impacts to the overall cost of the project too, is figuring out the best way to phase this through. Because keep in mind, a lot of this construction is going to happen through the winter months, and we're going to be in full blown operation. And
Right.
just take a look at last winter, for example, and the blizzard we had and all the snowstorms we had. We still have to be able to function and do our job while construction is going on.
Yeah.
So there's an awful lot of forethought put into how this is going to work.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that plays out in a lot of the design aspects and how they phase everything through. I know that the main goal is to do section by section, so they can, they can make it logistically work, and we still function at as close to 100% as normal. It's still going to be tough on us.
Sure. Yeah, I know, like, I know you guys are accommodating, but that sounds like a challenge, right? Like, is the electrical system being built as standalone and then like backfed or tied into the existing after?
I don't know how they phase that part of it.
Yeah.
I really don't.
It's like the first question that I see the electrical room there. Is it using?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I think what's gonna be able to do, to your point, I was looking at that myself, Justin, is they're gonna, of course, the DPW can live in here as this part's being built. And they could probably make the existing electric service untouched, but they can get this one all up and running, which can now be the electric for the entire building and then walk away from this.
Right.
So they can move into this side of the building and live until this piece is done, and then disconnect that later. So I think that actually's worked out pretty well. I think that goes way back to the feasibility of the project. Feasibility study kind of talked about that approach anyways.
They can start with Jim's service.
Yeah, but they can probably use the service from the building. to be
Right.
honest with you. They don't have to pay for a temp service. That's the classic example. or you have the temp service modified off the existing building service. Saves a lot of money. That's the stuff that Justin was talking about from a construction standpoint. If you have to start doing a lot of those things, that money starts adding up and it's not fun money because you're just spending money to facilitate things. Doesn't really end up in your building, other than just make it more expensive to build. Yeah, so Dennis, the same approach is still sticking, that they just would get this up and built and running. So you can move in and then you can turn this side of the building over to them so they can renovate it, right?
Right, and I think it's important for the committee to also know that this was not our first run at this. We took quite a few runs at it. When we start like you would imagine we would. We talked about all of the needs of the current department. We talked about future expansion and how we were going to meet those needs 15, 30 years down the road. And we ended up with a $30 to $33 million, 10,000 square foot larger facility than the one you see in front of you. And we realized when we ran the numbers with the finance director, this was way too much of an ask for the town. We just couldn't do it. So we cut way back. We cut 10,000 square feet out of this building. We're going to pack them in just like sardines. I mean, there's going to be times when we have to get to a piece of equipment in the middle of that storage facility on a weekend or a holiday that we're going to have to pull 5 other pieces of equipment out to get to it. That's just the nature of the beast. It's still better than what we have now, but we're meeting the codes. We're meeting electrical, plumbing. We're meeting the HVAC and exhaust codes. We're meeting the DEP requirements for a wash bay for snow and ice to keep us out of fines and this is the important aspect of the building. It meets the core needs of the department. There's no frills here.
Yeah, just look at the elevations. In some cards, Dennis, like I said, these are actually pretty good developed drawings on the architecture side. There's your wall section.
The only question I had, Dan, for the committee, for Weston and Sampson, that I asked them that they're working on, I thought it was odd that if you look at the new, so look at the workstation that's going to be for my mechanic that has next to the wash bay, it's got the lifts in it and whatnot. I couldn't understand why that was so tall, because the regular DPW building as it stands right now is 2 stories. And the new one it looks like it's going to be 3 stories. And I couldn't understand that the necessity for that extra aerial space. And they said that we need, for the crane that we're going to put in there, which is important for the everyday work that the mechanic does and whatnot, and all of the ventilation system. They felt that the ceiling might have some room to come down some, but they thought that was prudent. I thought that was excessive. That was the only thing that I caught out of it.
Well, I think to your point, if you look at this upper level, they're doing some light harvesting up here with those extra lights up there, or those extra windows up there. That's to get you some natural light in there. I would think it comes down to your bays. They're looking to make sure that you can have lifts in there in the future. So if you decide to put in lifts, you can lift the vehicle.
I have a lift in the current bay now, in the current DPW.
Yeah, I think you'll have more clearance because they have the mezzanine up here too, so they're giving you space above there.
They agreed that they thought they could lower that some, but they didn't think it would be a significant savings in cost.
So at the
And
end of
keep
the
in
day,
mind-
filling envelope costs you X amount of dollars per square foot you're putting up, so.
Right.
It goes money back, and it goes back to like, if you want to put a little more TLC to the existing building so it matches well, so it's gonna look new. Even though it's really the old building with just some basic improvements to it.
I'm more interested in performance than aesthetics, but and the other item that I want to talk about briefly is just the conversation about the lift station. So there was some concern, and this is early on in the stages, which is why they put it in there, that there might be some conflicts with other utilities for getting the sewer line out to meet gravity. And that's why they had proposed, at a worst case scenario, the lift station, which my recommendation and my experience tells me you put the gravity feed out first, and that's your priority. And if I have to move a water line because of it, it'll be cheaper than the lift station, I assure you.
Yeah,
Which is
lift-
why I'm sure
You-
we'll do gravity.
you'll want to avoid the lift station at all costs. And I think it was nice that Andy brought that up. And
Yeah.
he's been doing utilities for buildings for 40 years. So
Well,
he's
see,
pretty,
yeah,
pretty
keep in mind,
confident.
and Andy went by the elevations and he was looking at the inverts and the connections, but that's not what Weston and Sampson was worried about. They're worried about the conflicts with, there's a couple of electrical lines and 2 water lines that we're crossing. And and I can sync the water lines to Hong Kong. That's not a problem. The electrical lines also can be negotiated. So I still think that would be a cheaper solution than putting in a lift station.
Yeah, I would move those to avoid lift station for sure.
Yeah.
The first cost is a little more, the recurring cost of the lift station is gonna be painful in the life of the building.
Betcha. You and I are on the same page on that one.
And it's something that the wastewater guys don't wanna deal with. I used to just ask them, they'll tell you how much they love a lift station.
At the end of the day, I'm very pleased with the design that we're looking at. And my only apprehension is that when we originally undertook this endeavor, one of the things that the select board was adamant about was making sure that we took into consideration some level of future growth. This doesn't. I mean, when you look at even the admin section, all of those meeting rooms in the kitchen, that is my exact number of staff that I have today, not 20 years from now or 15 years from now. And putting all of the vehicles and everything that has a transmission, an engine, tires, and hydraulics inside the building during the winter months, that's barely going to fit everything that I have today. But that's what it had to be.
Yeah,
Up against.
you have the ability to build on, of course, this way.
Yes, we made sure that we had our future growth consideration is in our ability to expand in later years. And I'm hoping when I talk later years, I'm talking 25 or 30 years. And that's why we're keeping a canopy in the loop, and we're talking about being able to put equipment in there that is not essential or not used on a regular basis, especially during winter months. I mean, obviously all of our trailers and such, there's no need to keep that stuff indoors. This is things that have transmissions. You don't want to report to the DPW at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday or a Sunday with a snowstorm coming and load a truck with 12 yards of salt and a plow on the front with a cold transmission and hydraulics and hit the road and stop pushing. It's not good. It's not a good idea. You're going to take
Yep.
years. You're going to take years of life off that equipment that costs several $100,000 to replace.
Dennis, I have a quick question. In the 2020 climate bill, there was a regulation that Massachusetts adopt the California standards that for electrification of vehicles in order to reach net zero. And they originally were supposed to start requiring all mid and large size trucks, a certain percentage to be fully electric, I think by 2026. That got, they kicked that can down the road, I think. The Mass Municipal and some of the municipalities opposed it. But it's the law, so all you can play with is the regulations. So it got, pushed down the road, I think, till 2028, where it's supposed to start, I think. I haven't been following it that closely, but I guess my question is, do we have any capacity here for the electrification if we are forced to start procuring electric vehicles? Or do we have our fingers crossed that that's never gonna happen? And the law is on the book.
The short answer is no, and the long answer is no. We don't currently have the capability to have that type of equipment. And I can tell you, based on my experience in this field, that type of equipment is 3 times the cost of the equipment that we purchase today. So
Yeah. I'm not
I'm
arguing for
hoping,
it,
I'm
but-
hoping that their phasing is they're being aggressive with their initial discussions, and their actual phasing is going to be considerably longer, because something like this takes a decade or more to start phasing into a community.
Okay, because originally, again, I was following it for a different organization, but originally it was supposed to start phasing in, I think 2026. And again, they kicked it down the road for a year and then another year. But it's still a law on the books. And,
Kathy, I can answer that. Basically, it's really simple. The building has to be infrastructure in service, the roof. The roof has to support solar by code.
Mhm.
And you have to have in the electric room, the infrastructure to support electrification, which includes
for vehicles.
future vehicle charging.
Okay,
When you have to have that, that's kind of a hit.
okay,
In the DD, we'll be able to see that.
okay.
I will tell you as a fire protection person who is around both battery energy storage systems and electrical. In fact, I had a brand new high-rise building in Arlington University. They had a fire 30 days into the new building in the high-rise with electrical, without lithium-ion battery research. So this is the world we're living in. But anyways,
Yeah.
so I think if you look at vehicles of this going forward in the future, whether it starts with
Yeah.
regular cars or smaller trucks
Yeah.
or the bigger trucks.
Yeah.
I think you're going to be seeing those that go underneath like a solar canopy or something like that in the future. And I think the site's got enough room for that if we
Okay.
go there.
And that's the
I've
capacity.
got with Dennis, I think you're talking a ways down the road.
Well, we've been pushing for that.
Yeah.
But
But they have written in there the electrification. Here's this room we were just talking about. If there's no lift station, this room's gonna get much smaller and simpler, which would be good. And then there you go. That's gonna make it easier to have room for electrification and electric. I know that the electrical engineers have to factor that in. It's part of the energy code compliance. So some of those things are in the building code. They're in the 10th edition of the Massachusetts State Building Code. They're in our 2023 energy code. So as we start to see engineering plans in the next phase, you can start to see how that will unfold. But they actually have the narrative, they're covering that. I mean, at the end of the day, this building actually, from a solar perspective, if you go back to the roof, it's a huge, huge roof to do that there. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of roof space to do solar on this building. All the new construction has to be designed to be solar ready to receive the roof. So structural, electrical infrastructure, it's gotta be there. Any other questions? Open up the floor, anybody else on the committee? It's been a good 45-minute discussion. Lynn's been taking notes, it's recorded.
Yeah, I don't know how to.
I don't see anything. We'll take the recording, we'll boil it down.
Yeah.
I had the Blue Beam session set up and I was gonna just, if I can get Sophia or Justin to come back check, I do have some time tomorrow because 80% of my company is shut down from an IT standpoint. I'll have time to sit down and put some of this stuff into the Blue Beam session. Dennis, that way we can put everything in comments on drawings as they were submitted to us.
Dan, did you get everything from Weston and Sampson? They were supposed to send you?
I'll check that out tomorrow. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep that divorced, Dennis, just because we're just dealing with just the schematic design as everything's done in the town hall meeting.
I know,
That's
but
why-
they had DD yesterday and we
Yeah.
talked about they said they would make sure you got it. I just want to make sure you got it. That's all.
Yeah, if I could just ask the committee to work with Sophia and and Justin about putting this into the Bluebeam. We'll keep a Bluebeam session going forward. And we'll keep the submissions in folders. That way we can keep records of all our comments. And they'll show up electronically in here. So if anybody has any other questions, I was just gonna kind of take the information that we have recorded and discussed here, get it into the Bluebeam session and get Sophia and Justin just to back check it quick, because they both use the software program like I do. And then that will be the information that we send back over to the DPW building committee as our review comments. And also we can add Weston and Sampson right away, so you can keep things going fast. That's the beauty of Bluebeam. It keeps everything electronic and live and quick and in one place.
I have a question. Could you just add me to the Bluebeam session with my work email? I can email you my work email, but my personal one isn't working with Bluebeam right now for some reason.
Yeah, it's probably, you probably had a student license that had.
Yeah, I probably did.
Turned it off on you.
Yeah, no more luxuries.
No more luxuries. Yeah, if you just send me in an email to my town email, that your Bluebeam, I'll add you. And
Okay.
if you guys are around tomorrow and Saturday, we can probably get this put together. And then we can create a record back for us to include in the setting meeting minutes. But yeah, generally, I feel like everything's as expected and on track. These were all good questions and comments.
So, overall, you're making comments to assist and, for the betterment of this. But as we're are we almost to a vote to, this is what it is, we're working on betterments of it. But as it comes to town meeting, our recommendation, are we at that stage yet to make?
Yeah, I think we're at a recommendation stage.
think
I don't
it's
see there's
time to
anything that we couldn't
Make our recommendation.
make a recommendation that we essentially, endorse the project. I'll leave it at that, endorse the project, and you guys have to make the motion. And that we provide the review comments that we talked about tonight. And that we'll do that in meeting minutes and in the Bluebeam session, if that works for everybody.
So we need a motion for a favorable action at town meeting, and
So we would recommend that we recommend the article as,
we recommend, we recommend, Article 5 with favorable action. And follow up on that is that the committee,
with our committee comments to
With
be
the committee
addressed for the
comments.
next phases of construction.
Yeah.
Next phases of design. The design, development, and construction documents phases of the project, of the design phases of the project. So that's your motion?
yeah, that's my motion.
I'll second it.
So I have a motion for us to accept, to make a favorable recommendation on the project. And that we will provide our review comments for the schematic design as discussed tonight and in our meeting minutes. And will be incorporated into the Bluebeam from our email and our discussion and recorded session tonight. And that we will forward those to the DPW committee, the DPW director, and FinCom.
And
I'm just putting a little.
That's
editorial
what you
to
said,
it.
right?
yeah, I'm gonna have to watch back the meeting. What I pretty much said is the process that
Yeah.
favorable action for Article 5 to move this forward, and then, but yes, what
Yes.
Dan said.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Dan Lazar's aye.
Lynn Haggerty, aye.
Kathy Robertson, I.
Justin Pollard, aye.
Sophia Studley, I.
Motion carries unanimously.
Who was the second? You?
Yes.
Yeah.
Catherine. Yeah, I appreciate that. So, yeah, Sophia, if you can send that email, I'll get with you and Justin. Guys, is there a particular day, tomorrow or Saturday, that works best? To do a quick check-in if I get lucky enough to get it all in. I do want
I
to get it done. I may have
Do
to travel.
tomorrow after 4 p.m.
How about Saturday? Is Saturday good for either one of you? Just at two other times?
I have
I
opening
could
day.
probably,
I can't, I don't think I can do Saturday. I have opening day and a bunch of stuff going on.
Gotcha, so you're off on Saturday. And I think a Friday's too quick, because I might not be done. Do you guys have time the afternoon or evening on Sunday?
I might have time tomorrow, Friday afternoon.
Okay, let me see if I can try to get it done tomorrow for tomorrow. So you said 4 o'clock, Sophia?
yeah, maybe 5 o'clock so I can have an hour to do it.
Okay,
But yeah, I can work on it tonight too.
So there's a subcommittee of 3, which.
they're just gonna
Right.
capture into the session.
Which are the.
So the comments are there, so they can be given right back to us in the same
Excellent.
electronically.
Excellent.
Then you're gonna crank out meeting minutes.
Then I'm gonna try and crank out meeting minutes and write me up some good descriptions, guys.
I'm gonna turn on the transcription of the teams and let it do its thing.
Actually, I have to get the full transcription from the town clerk, because I did it for the first.
I think I have it too. I think it's because it's on my page.
Okay.
So the only other thing we need to do is just be ready to, if something materially changes with FinCom, Select Board, or
The warrant
the
is,
DPW committee itself. No, I mean, if we just need, the only thing is we just may need to meet before the meeting if something comes up outside of our committee downstream. Right now, I don't think there's going to be, but if it does, we just need to be able to be available.
so when are the next 2 meetings? The next meeting is, and I think that the town manager is there, so, Kristen, is it, next week? Is it finance and the board of selectmen and next week, next Tuesday? Should we be?
They're actually finished with all of their recommendations and the warrant has been posted.
That's right, okay.
But we don't have to do anything then.
Then we're good. And we're letting you know that we've got favorable action on this article. Correct?
Yep.
Yep,
Already been voted.
Thank you very much to the committee.
thank you.
So I have to go through and make sure I'm posting. Is there any other unanticipated business that we have at the moment that you may think of?
The only business we need to get to is we need to have a future meeting to go over our guidelines. Just a little,
The after town meeting.
after town meeting. So for new business, next focus, we need to do that, and probably we need to focus on, I don't know, is it our job to focus on what's our the priorities of what needs to be?
We can post a meeting. Kristen, is there a particular time at the end of? I know you'll be very busy. End of May or beginning of June, when you think that it'll be time for us to meet to have that conversation, because I think you would be an important person to be in the room with us.
Sure, I'd be happy to join that conversation. I am not headed anywhere till the last week of August. So as long as you don't catch me then, we should be good.
June, I'm thinking the first week of June.
Okay,
I
all
got a busy May travel for work.
right, and we can work out what the agenda looks like.
Yeah.
What we're gonna,
Yeah, anybody in the committee, you can send me anything you put on the agenda for that discussion. So you can freely email me stuff and I'll start something on an agenda.
oh, so you're gonna do the agenda for that?
I'll have you do it though.
Oh, thanks.
But they can email Lynn or I any of those items to get on the agenda. That's fine.
I just,
What is the discussion, capital?
We have a planning guideline that we have posted that's been a draft for a long time.
Okay,
It's about trying to again formalize the process a little more. And it's just, it's within our own mechanics of our own committee.
we should meet, I don't know, I think we should have a good discussion on, like, what needs to be done, like have a priority list of, like, capital improvements that need to be, just to suggest, have a conversation about, so we're looking to the future.
I can definitely, I have plenty of the
Well,
history
we
stuff to hand to Kristen about that. We've had a capital plan in the past that's
We
been
have.
not been updated. Yeah.
We need to update that, so we have a plan that say, I don't know, the police station is next, or what is next? I don't know, it seems like we keep, collectively as a town, we keep deviating from, or putting out one fire. We have this is the list. Can we,
Yeah,
So,
before
Chris,
one here, Hayes from this
Yeah.
committee.
Well,
I-
the
we were talking
DPW
about
was-
that, yeah.
2013 or farther back. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I know I'm one of the biggest ones that complain about that they shouldn't have to be working in that trailer. That they, I mean, that's a mild complaint, but still, it's
We
relevant.
can sequence things, okay.
Through
Yeah,
the
Chris,
chair.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I'm still getting my feet under me, believe it or not. It has been less than 2 months, so forgive me if I'm asking something that is known. But does the committee have a bylaw and a charge and a process for how you evaluate projects?
So all we have is the bylaw that forms our committee.
Okay.
So that's in the town code, so that's in there. You'd have to go back to the original capital committee formation for the committee charge. What we did in 2020 was we took a community compact capital budget committee guideline. And we got that put together and adopted. It's on our committee website. So it's actually from a committee, a community similar to the size of Upton that went through issues in which they use that. So we do have a draft. So then we do have a draft working, but at this point, it's just a published guideline. And it's still got draft written all over it. And there's a whole bunch of things that it gives us guidelines of what to stick to and what to make sure other committees are doing. So we don't duplicate things and do things beyond the purview of what a typical capital budget committee does.
And that's great. And I have had the benefit of working for a town a little bit bigger than Upton, of about 11,500 in Leicester, and a lot smaller of 3,400 in Berlin. And one of the things I did in both of those towns is I worked a lot with the capital committees to get that charge and that process established. So I have some good baseline kind of information too that I might be able to help bring to the table so that we can get this codified.
Great. And then we were in line with the Donahue Center for Community Compact Assistance. So I can probably follow up with you about where we are with that. I do know a little bit. I've spoken with Steve Byrne about that.
Yes, Steve mentioned it to me as well, the Collins Center study that they are going to do, and I haven't had a chance to reach out. Steve may have sent me a contact person over there, and I kind of parked it in my to-do very soon after town meeting bucket, but that is certainly on my radar as well.
Yeah, so we'll put that on that agenda we're talking about. And
Great.
really, at your point, I think we're all saying the same things. So we're looking forward to that.
Excellent, sounds great.
You have it, and I give Bert another one.
No, it's going to be presents.
Anybody else from the public do we have on? No, we just have Kristen and Dennis, so we don't have the public with us. I don't see anybody from the public, so we're gonna have to deal with any of the public. So that leads me to, we're gonna target the first week of June for that meeting. We'll go for the Thursday as the default at the moment, if that works for everybody, put it on the calendar. First Thursday of June. And then I'll entertain a motion to,
Adjourn. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Catherine motion to adjourn at 8:04. I'll second the motion.
okay, roll call vote, Dan Lazar's aye.
Aye. Lynn Haverty, aye.
Kathy Robertson, I think.
Sophia Studley, aye.